This is Kaylee from Polson Middle School. Do you remember what happened on the day that Andrew fell into the water?
My sister was supposed to be watching him outside, and I was in the house, and I looked out and didn't see him. So I ran down the stairs and out of the house, and just then he was already on the dock, and he was all wet. How did you get back on the dock? And so he said, I fell in the water, and the Flathead monster picked me up and put me on the dock. Saved me. She saved me.
Okay, my name is Ak'anukam Kupmuku, and but in English, my name is Vernon Finley. The Kootenai name for this lake is Yawu'nik Akuknuk. Yawu'nik was what we called the water monster that lived here, and so the lake is named after him. This is a really long story, so I'll tell the part that is just about where this place got its name from, okay? There was 3 woodpecker brothers that were living in an area down by Yellowstone Park, and they were traveling in this direction, and Yawu'nik swallowed the youngest of the 3 woodpecker brothers. When Yawu'nik was living here in this lake, he went and he was having an affair with Grouse, and Grouse's husband was Hawk, and Hawk became very jealous and very mad about it. He saw them down by the lake, and when he went down there to them, he shot Yawu'nik with an arrow. So he became angry, and he drank up all of the water in the lake. He left the lake on the opposite side, right on the opposite side from here, where Elmo is. He was dragging his body along through there. Where he was dragging himself, he made Big Draw. And so as he was dragging himself through there, Hawk was after him. He caught up to Yawu'nik, and he went and he took his arrow back. He grabbed his arrow that was sticking out of Yawu'nik's stomach, and when he pulled it out, it caused him to just break open, and all the water spilled out. It flooded. The place went from totally dry with no water to being flooded. The water kept rising and rising. And Hawk took his tail feather out and stuck it in a spot and said, okay, now I'm going to sing a song that will try to stop the water from rising. And if the water rises past the 7th stripe, then we're doomed. And it stopped right at the last stripe. And he kept singing, and then the water started to go back down until where it is right now, today. And that's why the lake is the way that it is right now, because that's where he stopped, and that's what he said. There's enough water, but not too much for a flood. That's when they started calling this lake Yawu'nik Akuknuk, which is his name, the water monster lake. You know, the way that the old stories were always told is that something could be a spirit, something could be a human, and something could be an animal or a plant, all at the same time. And so, yeah, it could be a sturgeon. It could be considered one of the water serpent-like things, like the Loch Ness, or it could be just a spirit, you know. So, or it might even be a human, you know. But according to the way the stories go, all of those things are all possible at the same time.
My name is Jim Manley. I was an attorney for 38 years, and now I've been the district court judge here for 8 years. I saw it once. So we were in Big Arm Bay, and it was in August. It was like a Thursday night, And there were no boats on the bay, and we were just sitting out there on the boat, and then we'd go swimming. And it was very quiet. You know how when everything's still on the water, sound carries? So we heard these kids playing in the campground way across the bay, because you could hear really good. I said, what is making that noise out there in the water? And we looked over, and there was a whole bunch of splashing going on. And as we looked, the splashing kind of started subsiding, and then we saw something, and it was like a big gray or black hump, and there were 2 or 3 of them, and it was moving very slowly to the north, directly toward like Wild Horse Island. And so we started saying, that's it, we're actually seeing it, that's the Flathead monster. So they put it in the paper. It was a front page article. In those days it was called the Polson Courier. And next thing you know, it's being picked up by newspapers all over, and even television crews all over. You know, the most common explanations are it's a log or a rogue wave or something like that. But what doesn't make sense to me about those common explanations is what was making all that noise that first drew our attention. I think it's a mystery, but I don't think it's a myth. You know, I don't know if you ever heard the story about the famous sturgeon caught in Flathead Lake. Well, it turned out it was a local real estate guy, an insurance guy, and it was trying to promote tourism here, so they claimed they had caught this big sturgeon. I think it might even be at the museum stuffed. Anyway, turns out it's pretty sure that they went down and caught it on the Snake River and then brought it up here and kept it on ice until they were ready to spring the big story.
I think that the most logical explanation is what is recorded by biologists. The sturgeon itself, being in Flathead Lake, is controversial. I would say that probably half of the people who reside around the lake believe that the sturgeon exists. The other half think it's a myth. This sturgeon was caught in 1955 by a local fisherman, Leslie Griffith, who responded to a contest. You put your bait on the bottom of whatever you're fishing, a river or a lake, and wait. Well, when it was caught in 1955, my grandfather firmly believed that it was a sturgeon and was thrilled when a sturgeon was pulled out of the lake during the contest. He put the sturgeon on ice. Usually the only ones who had big quantities of ice were butchers, and so he got local butchers to donate ice. And he hauled the fish around the lake, all the way from as far away as Arlee, and then all around the lake on Highway 93 and Highway 35 and up into Kalispell, showing it off and charging 25 cents a view. After 3 days in ice that wasn't a very good way to keep the fish refrigerated, he took it to a local restaurant known as The Ranch, which used to be west of this town in Polson, and had a fish fry, and they ate it. There are people who will tell you that in 1955 it was caught in the Snake River in Idaho, put in a tanker truck with water in it, and hauled at 30 miles an hour, the 250 miles it is in distance to the Snake River, and then put in the lake, and it was pretended to have been caught in the lake. That's absolutely illogical, because the fish was alive when it was taken out of the lake. So there's no way that it could have been hauled over basically dirt roads for 250 miles.
There are no sturgeon in this lake. My name is Barry Hansen. I work for the Salish and Kootenai tribes as a fisheries biologist. There's a lot of ways to define a monster, and the way I define a monster, I would say yes, there is a Flathead Lake monster, and it isn't just one, there's many. So lake trout is what I call the Flathead Lake monster. And this lake trout is a predator, and it eats all the other fish. This monster is a problem for us. So we're working to reduce their numbers and save our native trout. When the Salish and Kootenai people historically relied on bull trout and cutthroat, and they have a close connection to them.
Human beings, we're all part of that water monster. That's how we were created. The woodpecker brothers were able to slice him open and release their younger brother. They told the giant that helped them, you can have him, you can have his body to do with what you want as a reward for helping us. And what the giant did was take Yawu'nik apart piece by piece. He took out the eggs, the roe, like fish eggs, took them out and threw them across the water way to the west and said, where you land, you will become the human beings there. And he took out the liver and threw it across the water to the southeast, way across past Gulf of Mexico, straight way that way. And said, and where you land, you will become the human beings there. And took out the tallow from him, and threw it across the water to the east, and said, where you land, you will become the human beings there. So he took Yawu'nik all apart, piece by piece, and scattered them throughout the earth, throughout the world, in order to become the human beings. And so we're all different parts. We all come from a different part of Yawu'nik. So of course I believe in him because we're here.
And my last question is,
They're out there on a boat, and I'm sorry to say that the man who was laying there, he's like this. He looked like a monster because his stomach was so big. So that was the guy they got to be me. So they reenacted it, and the people were like this and like this and screaming and like they were scared to death because we wouldn't say it was scary enough.
You can reach your hands under the gills. You can do it. It's a monster, but I don't think it's going to hurt you.
this?
Reach all the way in and grab. And now lift. There you go. Lift it all the way up. Okay. So this is the Flathead Lake monster. There might even be a bigger one in there if you want to pick it up.